Welcome back to the G2Z online event series, and thanks for joining us. In the spirit of reconciliation, we acknowledge the traditional custodians of country throughout Australia and their connections to land, sea and community. We pay our respects to the elders past and present and extend that respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders. My name is Nell Thompson. I'm the coordinator of the National Getting to Zero program, or as we refer to it, G2Z, and I'll be hosting the webinar for you today. However, we'll blame any glitches in webinar, in the Zoom or internet on the internet gods, so nothing to do with me. Getting to Zero was developed by Animal Welfare League of Queensland, and they continue to support it to this day. G2Z offers its consulting, support and educational services at no charge to local governments and not-for-profits across Australia. Our focus continues to be on companion animal welfare and management issues such as strategy, legislation, operations, programs and community engagement, working towards reducing intake to pounds and shelters and keeping pets in their homes. We invite people to have a look at the website at g2z.org.au, sign up for our regular e-news, connect with us via social media and get in touch with us to see if we can help or have a chat about the issues that are facing your community or organisation. And so to today's session. Once I hand over to our presenter, there'll be around 50 minutes of presentation and around 10 minutes of question time once the presentation has concluded. The recording of this webinar will be accessible via our website to anyone to watch at any time. We're going to ask that everyone mutes themselves during the presentation unless our presenter indicates otherwise. If you have other questions, you can start putting them in the Q&A section and we'll get through as many as we can at the end of the session. If you have very quick questions that relate to your understanding of the content, put your hand up and we'll try and get to them during the presentation. As always, please excuse any working from home or car background noises that may filter through. We are incredibly excited and grateful to have an absolute expert in her field, Laura Mullen, licensed veterinary technician from the San Francisco SPCA, as a presenter today. And I to quickly interject and say I actually have a lot of gratitude for Laura's work, because I contacted her a couple of years ago with a litter of kittens and their mum that I had fostered, and they came down with ringworm, and she helped me through that and they recovered really, really quickly, really well. And I was just blown away by the amount of resources and knowledge and her generosity in sharing all of that. So this particular webinar has been in the back of my mind for a long time, because I think it's information so many people, you know, will really value from hearing. Laura started working at the SF SPCA in 2001 and enjoyed a variety of roles within the shelter medicine department, ranging from veterinary assistant to foster coordinator, and has now settled in the position of shelter medicine outreach programs manager. She's passionate about education and finding workable solutions within the shelter community. In 2012, Laura received a small grant from the SF SPCA board to start the SPORE program that now saves over 350 animals with ringworm yearly. And I would say probably that you know of, Laura, because there's going to be a lot of people who are using your resources that you don't even know about. So you're reaching people and kittens and cats all over the world. SPORE, which stands for Shelters Preventing Outbreaks of Ringworm Through Education, is a program that teaches shelters how to better detect, treat and manage ringworm in the shelter setting. Laura started out the SPORE training locally, focusing on municipal shelters in the Bay Area, and soon discovered a niche that would help to save countless of innocent lives. With the help of Maddie's Fund, more than 80 shelters from over 25 states have come to the SF SPCA to receive training from the SPORE program and are currently treating ringworm at their facility, eliminating fear through education in their community and saving lives. Over to you, Laura.
All right, thank you. Can you hear me well now? Thumbs up?
Absolutely, I can hear you.
Fantastic, even better. Okay, so we are going to get started with a little bit of fungus talk. So my name again is Laura Mullen, and I come from San Francisco, all the way over here, and it's a whole nother day here. So we're a little bit behind you. But what we're going to be talking about, I can't get my slides to go forward. Oh, no, my slide won't go forward. Okay. Oh, there we go, works. Okay, technology is not always my friend. So we're gonna get this started. So we have a lot of F's here. We got fighting fungus with facts, fungal fostering, and taking the fear out of fungus. The main thing I wanna do is really kind of desensitize a lot of our fears about fungus and treating ringworm. A lot of people have had terrible summers where, you know, we just had too much of it and we just didn't know what to do. So a lot of this talk is just going to really help you figure out how to treat these adorable little kittens that don't even know that they have anything wrong with them. So this is Harvey. Harvey was one of my faves. I have lots of faves, but Harvey was a cute little scrappy kitten, very quintessential ringworm guy. Harvey came from a high kill shelter in our area, but you know, he deserved a chance. And with the connections with this shelter, he was able to come to the San Francisco SPCA and ultimately grow up and get adopted. A lot of the animals around here don't have that good of chance. So it's really this program, and really our design is to get out and be able to teach people that they can do that. And these kittens don't know that they have fungus. They don't know. They just are a little bit, maybe a little bit breezy from the lack of hair. But aside from that, there's not a whole lot that they know. They're just kittens. And so we really need to figure out, how are we going to handle these animals coming in? So we get 4 kittens that walk into the shelter. No, it's not that good of a joke. But what we do see is that, unfortunately, one of our little tabby kittens in the corner has a little spot on his nose and a little spot on his toes. So what do we do with these kittens that come in the box? Do we put all 4 of them into ringworm, into isolation? Do we just treat the one? What can we use? What kind of science can we use behind this so that we know that what we are doing is the best interest of the animals and the shelter and the humans that are in the shelter? So first, we have to do our intake exams. First time these animals come through the shelter, we need to get a good look at them in the white light. Now, these are some obvious ringworm lesions that we see, some around the face, around the eyes. This poor kitten has it in the middle, has it all over. And somebody asked, is there something else that this kitten has? I'm like, nope, it's just ringworm. And eventually all those hairs grew back, and this kitten was a beautiful Siamese. Now you can see some of the classic lesions around the face and the eyes, but then there's also other lesions underneath the tail, in between the toes, all these sort of things that, you know, you really have to get a good look at, because it's not going to always be your common features, and they're not always going to look bald. So we have to develop some tools and figure out, how are we going to utilize our tools? We also can't forget about the dogs. I talk about cats a lot because that's what we see a majority of our animals in the shelter here. I treat about 300 animals a year, but only about 5 or so of those are dogs. And sometimes those are litter puppies or one dog here or there. We don't have too much in our area that needs rescue, which is very fortunate, but it is the same treatment protocol, and we see the same success in dogs. And we actually tentatively don't see them spread from dog to dog as much as we see it spread from cat to cat. But we don't see as much of it, but all the materials that we're going to talk about can be applied to dogs as much as they can to cats. So what are our tools that we use? Our first major tool is our woods lamp exam, our woods lamp. So this woods lamp, and I have a few different sort of ones here, some that are plug-in and some that are battery operated. And both of these have a good use. And what we need to do is we need to know how to use these tools. So when the animal is fluorescing, what happens is actually the spore lands on the hair. It takes about 7 to 10 days to chew through that outer keratin layer and dive on the inside of that hair shaft. Once it does dive on the inside of that hair shaft, it puts a little byproduct that coats the hair. And that byproduct is what shines when we use the woods lamp. And that byproduct we cannot wipe off. We cannot rub away. If we could, we wouldn't be here talking about ringworm or euthanizing cats in the shelter because of ringworm. So lots of times when I'm fluorescing a cat, I will also have a moist paper towel because I want to wipe away things that are glowing, but maybe not the ringworm glow, because there are different things that will fluoresce. Eye ointment, snot from the nose, snotty from the eyes, all those sort of things will fluoresce, but ringworm itself will have an anti-sticky mechanism, so it'll be an individual hair shaft that will be glowing bright green, and we call it this sort of apple green. And really it is kind of this bright hair that when you see from the fluorescence, you see exactly on those hairs, not on the skin, but on the hair itself. And so these are some some pictures that really show that it's really on the hairs. And the whiskers, which are really fun when they get ringworm because there's such thick hair follicles that it can be so bright on them. And so as their sort of hairs are covered with this byproduct, and as we are healing them with treatment, with the oral medications and the topical baths, what we're doing is we're pausing the infection and then we're letting it cure. So lots of times at the end of treatment, we will have these long, healthy hairs with a very tip of fluorescence. Almost looks like a fiber optics. And what we call that just like that, it's glowing at the tips. And a lot of times animals can clear and have a negative culture, even though they have a little bit of glowing at the tips, because the base of the hair where the infection actually has started is all healed. So ringworm can be very stubborn, and it's just a fungus that needs to kind of get out on its own. So here, can you see when you're working in the white light, and we do most of our exams and looking at the animals in the white light, when we're looking at all the cats, we want to say, ooh, can you see any sort of spot on this cat? And you can answer in the chat if you see any sort of hair loss on this cat with just using the white light. And anybody, I can see the chat. So anybody can answer on the chat and I can let you know that, what you're seeing above the left eye. Great job now. Yes, and everybody else chiming in. And then when we use the woods lamp, boom, it pops out and we're able to see it. Now this animal also came in with its sibling. And its sibling, if you look at it very quickly, you'll say, oh, it's looking good. I have 20 other animals to examine. Boom, boom, boom. I've only got a half an hour to do this and I'm moving really quickly. If we don't stop to use our tools, we may miss something. Can anybody see any spots on this cat in the white light? Okay, a little, yeah, Tracy, a little bit. Oh, it's okay. If you're muted by the host, just go ahead and join me in the chat because I can see that as well. So this animal actually has 3 spots on it. When we use the woods lamp, we see a little bit in front of that right ear, a little bit on the notch of this left ear, and yes, above the left eye, somebody caught that a little bit. But when we go back to see this cat, and if we didn't use our tools and we didn't use our woods lamp, we very easily could pass this cat up and move it on to spay neuter and move it on to adoptions. And then, 2 to 3 weeks later, all those areas that are fluorescing with those hairs that are nice and glowing, what happens is that byproduct actually coats the hair and digests it. So all of a sudden in one fell swoop, whoop, it's gone. And so sometimes you will see a cat at one day looking really great. I'm visiting this cat. I come back the next day and it has a nickel-sized hair loss on its wrist. Well, if we would have used our woods lamp the day before, we would have seen a bunch of glowing hairs. And so this cat that we see on the screen, very well, we could have missed, and then it will pop up later in population, or maybe after it gets adopted. And there's no worse PR for a shelter than actually getting ringworm out of your shelter and having them say, oh, don't go to that shelter. They give you ringworm. So it's really important that we kind of use our tools to the best of our abilities while we have these animals on our site. Okay, so now we get back to our kittens. Our 4 kittens, they walk into the shelter. One of the guys has some obvious lesions. So we're gonna woods lamp all of them. Now we find that, granted, our only guy with lesions was the only guy that we saw with woods lamp positive. So the other 3 kittens, we can't find any lesions on them. They may have been plucked from 3 different yards, 4 different yards, put in a box and brought to the shelter. Lots of times we don't know where these animals came from. They may be all individual kittens and not have come as one family unit. So we have to treat them individual. So our second step after we do our woods lamp exam is gathering a culture. we really need to process our animals in a systematic way so that one, I can get volunteers to do it, because that's always helpful. And two, I can interpret these results no matter who does the examination and who does the culturing. And so what we do is we gather our kittens, and they get what's called the Mackenzie toothbrush technique. And we brush them all over the cat. Oh wait, we got a little ahead of ourselves. So we brush them all over the cat, and we go ahead and we plate that on the culture. Now, a lot of times, a lot of shelters used to pluck. And then when I first started 20 years ago, I was told to pluck on the outside of the lesion because those hairs were, because the lesion actually had taken the hairs off, so you couldn't pluck the hairs on the lesion. Now, one thing, plucking's kind of rude. And when you think about how ringworm is growing, so when you think about how the ringworm is growing, we think that those hairs actually that are around that lesion that is bald, they actually are uninfected, or else they would be gone too. So when we pluck those hairs, a lot of times we can get a false positive. Plus, again, it's just not that nice for the cats, and I can't get my volunteers to go and pluck cats. So what we're going to be using is the toothbrush technique. So with this, when we get our fungal culture, we use fungal cultures that are flat and have two different color sides. One of them is the RSM, called rapid sporulating medium, and one of them is our DTM, our dermatophyte test medium. Now, if I could get a plate that's all with RSM, which kind of just helps grow my colonies just a little bit faster and get me information a little bit quicker, which being in a shelter, that's what we need. We need fast and quick. I would love to buy a culture that just had RSM, but they don't make it. So I have to buy these little biplates. And what we do is we brush the cat 15 times non-lesional. So we've used our Woods lamp and we've determined, okay, they got that space on their nose and the space on their toes. Now I want to make sure that I didn't miss anything on that cat. So I'm going to do 15 brush strokes with a toothbrush. Oops, I thought I brought a toothbrush, did not. With a toothbrush and brushing those cats really heavily in all those areas so that you know that I brushed that cat everywhere. And these are the results that I get. And then we want to save the last 5 brush strokes for those areas of suspicion. And then we want to store it in the incubator, ideally on site, and store it upside down. And the reason that we want to store it upside down is because we get condensation that falls on the lid. And we want the lid to hold the condensation and not our newly inoculated spores. This is something that's a little bit like I will take about a 2-hour conversation about sort of pathogen scoring. We're just going to touch on it really quickly to let you know that just because it grows on the culture plate does not mean that there is a true infection in that animal. Because there are times when that animal is just sitting there next to a new friend who has a lesion that's releasing spores, and then its new friend comes and, snuggles up against it, maybe has some spores on his hair coat, and then we go and we toothbrush the cat. Because if we have a friend who is with like one of those kittens that is with the kitten with the lesion, the kitten next to him who doesn't have anything, we're still going to brush him a total of 20 times so that we know that we've covered everything. And then what we do is we go back and we look at what grows, and then we can score this. So there are times where when we open our culture, we only have maybe 1 or 2 colonies. Then there are also times, and that's sort of later in treatment, there are also times that we open the culture and we have lots of colonies that are growing. And this is only like 5 days old, this culture. And so you will see, here's a better one of it sort of very robustly growing, a new culture. You'll see each one where we implanted the toothbrush impressions around the outside of there. Now, these cultures have color indicators indicating that it's a dermatophyte species. The red for the DTM and the green for the RSM. And so what this is really telling us is that we can do the same action on all these kittens. I brush them 20 times and I get 1 colony, or I brush them 20 times and I get 300 colonies. Now that 1 colony is still going to say it's a dermatophyte species, but I'm not that concerned about it because that does not signify a true infection. Now you may be thinking, what is she talking about? And how can she think all of this? And where does she get all of her information? I take it from very, very smart people who have lots of letters after their names, who live in the labs and do a lot of research. And so I take their research and I disseminate it and bring it to the shelters. And so Dr. Moriello and Dr. Newberry did a whole bunch of studies on pathogen scorings of the cultures. And I take their information and I try to apply it to the shelter setting. So here we can see examples of all these animals were plated exactly the same, but they got different results because they have different amounts of infection or no infection on their bodies. So let's go back to our 4 kittens. A week later, they grow 4 different culture plates. Our guy with the spots that we saw, definitely he has a very full plate. The guy next to him, he's got a few colonies here. The guys apart kind of stayed far away from him. They knew not to get with their new little spory friend. So when we look at this, we see that only 1 kitten, actually, when we look at these facts, we look at this from the studies of Dr. Moriello, Dr. Newberry, from all what they say is that there's only 1 kitten in this group that actually has ringworm. These 3 others are just exposed. And there's something that we can do that can take away their exposure and they can move on. And we only have to treat 1 kitten. Because we don't need extra kittens in ringworm. We have enough, and we can always help other shelters if we have other room. But we see that we can now make a plan for these guys, and we don't have to put all of them into ringworm by guilty by association. We can actually use our science, use our education to figure out what stage are you at and what's going on. So there are different types of ringworm. There are 3 different types of ringworm, but really what we see about 97 to 98% in our shelters, actually in most of the United States, is Microsporum canis. And that is what, that's what these culture plates have, and that's what we are experiencing right now in the shelter, in my shelter. But every summer, we do see different growths of different types of ringworm. So gypsum and trichophyton, it's good to note that they grow a little bit differently on the culture plate. And it's also important to do cultures in-house because we're able to see on day 5, this one culture plate, and this is the same culture on day 7. It's already sprouted, but on day 5, we can start to see that it's growing something. So we can take that animal back from foster, back from adoption center, from wherever it may be, because we see the start of it growing. It's something that is significant. Now, if I sent this to a lab or if I tried to do a cytology on this, I couldn't get that done. I couldn't get a positive result. But if I've watched my cultures grow, I know that this day 5 will be this day 7, and that will give me a positive culture result for Microsporum canis. But I can go ahead and start treatment on day 5. You know, the earlier we start treatment, the earlier they're done with treatment. This is a poster that I've kind of put together that shows each of the individual types of ringworm that we see on our shelter animals, and look how they look on the culture, as also how they look under the microscope. Each one has different ones that are sort of that are indicative for their species. But like I say, I think you guys probably also mainly see Microsporum canis. Does anybody know what species they see at their shelter or place where they work? If you do, drop it in the chat. It'd be interesting to see if you guys also experience mainly Microsporum canis as well. Now, we get Microsporum gypsum and trichophyton mainly from the country and from different sort of rural areas, which we do transfer in a lot to San Francisco. So that's how we get a lot of ours are through transfers. So ringworm treatment. Now that our kitties have some positive cultures and now we have to do some treatment. What is ringworm treatment? Ringworm treatment is actually 3 concurrent treatments that have to be done together. You can't just do the oral medication without treating the hair of the cat. You can't treat the cat without treating the environment that it sits in. And so you really have to go ahead and look at all of these 3 concurrent therapies and ensure that they are done together for your quickest success. The oral medication that we use is mainly itraconazole. We use the Fungal here, which is it kind of came out, there used to be Sporanox, and that was a lot more expensive. Fungal is a little bit cheaper, same medication. When we have bigger animals or dogs, we use terbinafine. Now, terbinafine is pretty cheap, and it does have a really good success rate, but it's a large tablet, And so we use it for our dogs. The cats is a little bit hard to get the correct dosage, and to get it compounded, you're going to spend as much as you will with itraconazole. And we know that itraconazole is very good and very safe for the kitties. So that's for the oral medication. For the topical medication, in-house in our shelter, we do the lime sulfur dips. Yes, it's a little stinky, but to me, it smells like success. It smells like lives being saved, and I love the smell. But our foster homes, you know, I want them to do the treatment, and also our public animals that are seen through a public hospital, if they have ringworm, we actually send them out with a Peroxigen or Peroxiwash shampoo. And this shampoo also is an instant sporicidal, much like lime sulfur. And oh, I just saw one thing in the question. So itraconazole I use starting at 4 weeks of age. I will also treat a nursing mom, and the babies will get it through the milk a little bit. But then when the babies reach 4 weeks of age, they start their first culture and they start itraconazole. Sometimes I've been able to treat the mom, and then she's expressed, you know, itraconazole through the milk, and she actually was she was able to groom our kittens and be relaxed, and we were able to avoid infections on our kittens by dipping the kittens, because I will actually start the topical medication and the bat shampoos at like a week old. Just keep them warm after their dip, but that's the most important thing for them, because we need to protect them from getting ringworm from their moms. And then it's really important to clean the environment that they live in. We can't just clean the cat and have it sit in the same bed. So what we need to do is we need to make sure that all the animals come out of the wards once a week, and we declutter and clean those wards before putting the animals back in. And what we have seen from that is that we have really clean wards. We have done environmental cultures on our wards. Is my screen frozen? Because it looks like my screen's frozen. I'm sorry if my screen is freezing in really odd ways. Hopefully you are still able to hear me. So it's really important to do the environmental decontamination. We've had a Persian cat that came into treatment
I've lost you now, Laura. Is anyone else still hearing Laura? You can drop a note in the chat. No, okay. Laura, if you can hear me, it might be worth closing out and then jumping back in again. I think your internet may be playing up at your end. Hang in there, guys. I think Laura's working on the issue. Yay, she's back.
I'm back. Can you see me? Can you see my? Okay. Let's try to share
PowerPoint yet, but
yeah, I'm gonna try to share my screen now. Do you know when I cut out? Oh, wait, you need to allow me to share the screen. Make me host again.
Really? Okay. Yep.
Yeah.
All right. In a second.
I think because I went out.
Yeah. I might need to.
I'm sorry, I'm coming back. I am host now. Yes, I am.
Perfect.
Rad. Okay. Oh, wow. Okay. You see?
That looks great. We can't see you, but we
Oh,
can
I'm
see.
coming back.
Yep, there you are.
Yeah. There I am.
Excellent.
I'm here.
Yep.
All right. Who can tell me when you last heard me? What was I talking about?
So it was just after you froze.
What did I freeze at?
You were
What was I talking
answering.
about?
Yeah, you were answering the question about.
Giving the moms itraconazole?
Yes, that's
Okay.
right.
Okay, so I think I'm still on the treatment screen.
Yeah, I think so.
All right, cleaning wards. Okay, good. Yay. Okay, talking about cleaning environment. Perfect. So I don't think you missed too much. You might have seen a weird face or something like that, but because it always freezes in the weirdest faces. So basically, yes. So what I was saying is that we really got to treat all of these so that we can be successful. And most places forget about the environment, and it's hard to do, but it's very important to do. Okay, let's see if I can. Oh, no, come on. Okay, all right. So what we do is we do the lime sulfur dips, and we do it at an 8 ounces per gallon dilution, and we actually use a sprayer. So we don't physically dip the cats, because who wants to be that like 30th cat that dipped in a bucket? Nobody does. And cats hate being dipped in buckets. And we want to make this somewhat of a positive experience, because they're going to be doing this for like the next 6 to 8 weeks. And we don't want to be fighting the cats for this. Plus, we usually have a bunch of kittens that are pretty okay with most that we do. And a lot of the kittens that we get, they start at about 4 weeks of age. You know, they think that this happens to all the cats. You know, they're like, oh yeah, it's okay. We get dips twice a week. It's a little spa, you know, sulfur dips, sulfur spas, people pay a lot of money for. And these guys, they get them for free twice a week. And, you know, most of our kittens by the end, they're actually kind of purring. It's the massage time, and it's done really fast with the sprayers, and what we use are mist sprayers. So it gives a fine mist. It's not a spray where they can kind of feel each time that you spray it. And then no kittens ever like to be sponged, and it really kind of works out of the hair coat that way. With the sprayers, you're able to massage it into the hair coat very well. Now there is the difference between the lime sulfur and the Peroxiwash. They are both an instant sporicidal. The lime sulfur dip has that good smell, and it also has a way to coat the lesions. And it coats the lesions, and it prevents them from releasing more spores. And so that's why we apply this to the dry coat, and we have to let it sit and dry on the hair. Now they don't have to be drip drying, so we can spray them down, apply it to the coat, massage it in, and then get one sort of squeeze dry with a towel, and then put back into somewhere where they have some heat support, like a heat lamp or a carrier that might have a heat disc in it, or that sort of thing. Lots of times we take that opportunity to put them in carriers with a heat disc and then clean their environments while they're drying. Now you can see a lot of ways that we also don't want to be using our scruff when we're holding these animals. So we need to find different ways so that we can hold the animal, but we're not sort of pinning them down. What we're going to do is hopefully it'll show and the internet will be happy, is we're going to look at a small video that I made on how to dip the cats. You might need to up the sound. All right. So that's our fun little video. And then you can kind of see like the different ways to kind of handle them, because not everybody likes the dips at first. And sometimes you get a little bit older cats that are a little bit harder to kind of put through this. But really you want to be able to make it as fear-free or less minimal stress, more than the fear-free is kind of a coined phrase. Then you have to include food and things like that, which we don't. But we really make it a minimal stress environment because we really want them to be able to somewhat enjoy it, or at least not stress about it twice a week as we're doing it. So this is our ringworm program. This is kind of this quick and dirty. People are always asking me for my protocol and things like that. And this is things that I've taken from Dr. Moriello and Dr. Newberry. And so it's very easy, but what is hard and what I teach my 3-day weekend workshops about is how to actually apply this to the shelter setting. How do you get this done? How do you get this done with manpower, without manpower, with volunteers? And how can you keep being successful so that you can keep helping shelters around your area and keep it and not burn out from it? One, you'll see the amazing transformation. This is a kitten that we called Hi-Fei in the top. And then this is the graduation picture of Hi-Fei in the adoption center. Same cat, a lot more hair. I wish they could all have these little adoption hats, but they don't. But they're very cute. And then, so what we do is we do our intake evaluation with utilizing our Woods lamp. A direct examination is actually taking that glowing hair, if you're suspicious as to why it's glowing, and you can look at it on the microscope to actually see that it has physiological differences that indicate that it is a ringworm infected hair and not just some glowing hair because I had some snot on it or that sort of thing. Once they're in treatment, we do itraconazole at 5 milligrams per kilogram for 21 days. If they are under 6 months, which is the majority of our population, they get a pulse of 1 week on, 1 week off, 1 week on, 1 week off. So they receive their 21 doses over a 5-week period. They receive it on week 1, week 3, and week 5. Because they're going to be in there anyways for that amount of time, and we will want to allow them to grow and to be able to go ahead and, increase their dosage as they're growing. Now with the adults that are pretty much at the same weight, they have an excess of fat on their bodies that the kittens just don't have because they're kittens. And the itraconazole actually builds up in that fat layer. And it has been tested that 2 months after that 21st dosage of itraconazole, an adult cat is still at therapeutic levels to resist a ringworm. And so we find that our adult cats, they go through ringworm a lot faster because they have much better immune systems. And our kittens, they just have growing immune systems. And depending on how they come in, they may be really covered in ringworm, or they may only have 1 or 2 lesions. And it all is dependent upon their own individual immune system and when we start treatment. So if we're starting treatment on a litter of cats and one has it really bad and one is just breaking, we start the treatment and it just pauses and then it slowly gets better. That one that was really infected might have to stay a little bit longer, but that one that we caught early might be able to go through a lot faster. And so to determine how they are doing under treatment, we culture them weekly. And we culture them weekly so we can look at their response to treatment. And then they also get their twice weekly lime sulfur dips while they're in isolation, and weekly deep clean of their affected ward. And then each week we see, who maybe has a negative culture and has been there for 6 to 7 weeks at that point. Then that animal gets to go and graduate. And it's so much fun, and it's really exciting when they get to graduate the program. We used to have a volunteer that used to help us with the graduations, and we had this little graduation bear. It was like just a teddy bear with a graduation cap on it, and she had the kittens all attack graduation bear, and then we take pictures of this was their graduation pictures, was them attacking graduation bear. And it was really fun, and we kind of like hung them up all over, and it was really inspiring for our volunteers to be like, I remember when that guy came through, he was so cute, he was so scrappy. And it really gives them a lot of drive to help us. And it can be really cute also. So as I mentioned, the SPORE program stands for Shelters Preventing Outbreaks of Ringworm Through Education, because shelters and pounds are always going to have ringworm come into the shelter. It's what we do with it, and it's our knowledge about the subject can avoid having an outbreak situation. We can keep it where it's supposed to be. In my ringworm wards that are kind of in the back of the shelter, when I first started out, we saved about 50 to 70 a year. Amazing. And then now we're up to about 300. But what's happened is we have been able to keep it in the back of the shelter and we haven't seen anything pop up more in our adoption center or that sort of thing. It's about keeping it where it's supposed to be. Because I also agree that, you know, many of these outbreaks can be avoided with just educating both the staff and the volunteers in a shelter. So also, once you get ringworm in the shelter, and let's say you have too much ringworm and you need to get it out of the shelter because we need to save these cats, we need to start thinking about how we can put them into foster homes. We have a program called Finishing School Foster Program, which after 4 weeks of treatment, so granted their stay is usually about 6 to 8 weeks long. So after about 4 weeks of treatment in the shelter, then we put them up for Finishing School Foster. And this foster program, these foster parents are amazing. They bring them into their bathrooms. They isolate them from the resident animals because they are still infected, but they have a way less infection than they did at the start of treatment. And they've already been under treatment. And so they're releasing very little spores. Now, if we had stopped their treatment, it might flare up again. But by the time they're getting them, they're releasing very little. So they are at little risk themselves. Our foster parents learn how to culture because it's just brushing the kitten and putting it on the culture plate. And then they submit the cultures to the shelter. And when we've had 2 negative cultures from their foster home, then the kittens can come back and go through spay neuter and get adopted. And we also know that we can give them other types of kittens, not just Finishing School Ringworm foster kittens, because they've cultured those cats negative and their foster space is clean. Plus, we also pick foster homes that are going to be really clean and listen to rules and all those stuff. We know we always have those shining star foster homes that always want to do more. So it's about being picky and getting it into the right homes, because they can do a lot of things and they can help your wards expand without ever having to expand your manpower at your shelter. So like I said, the foster volunteers, they are taught just as our staff is taught on how to do the sampling. And that's why we make it really simple, but also very effective, that these are very sensitive culture plates that pick up and grow colonies, even if you aren't really good at culturing the cats, that they are very sensitive and they will bring it up. So when we talk to our foster parents about how do you set up the homes, I kind of reached out to a few of my foster homes and said, well, how do you set it up? I want to talk about it. And what's amazing is they all have different ways that they kind of troubleshoot how to kind of keep this one top picture of how to keep the supplies not part of kitten toys. They have a lot of clear Tupperware bins to kind of keep things in. It's amazing what little shelves kittens will find on. And so they realize they have to take everything off of all the shelves. And then this one all the way picture to the right actually used to have a big clawfoot tub. And when the foster parent went away on a business trip, her husband actually tore out the tub and put up these cute little stencils around there and made it her foster bathroom for a nice big surprise when she came home. And now she has this amazing foster bathroom that she's able to clean easily and that sort of thing. Another good tip is to kind of put a baby gate at the door so that you have a little break and they can't bust out the door when you're trying to get in there. And it's really just kind of being creative and figuring out how to do it. Now, when I asked different foster parents kind of what their challenges were, a lot of it are what you can think of. You know, their challenges that they have to keep them for sometimes up to 5 to 6 weeks. They feel bad about them being in a bathroom, but hey, it's much better than a kennel. And the biggest reward is that they know that these animals would not be able to make it to their SPCA if they didn't have a foster home, because a lot of times my wards are completely full and I have shelters begging for help, and the only way I can find room is to get my current in-house population out into foster homes so that I can free up more room to intake more from at-risk shelters. And these foster parents, they know what their job is and they enjoy it, and they find it the easiest part that they find is actually doing the dips, is what a lot of people would think that they would hate to do. And they found that the treatment and the dips were very easy. And they were surprised by that. Most of the time, they're getting kittens that have already had a month of dips. So it's no surprise to them. They may be getting the less stinky dips. They might enjoy it a little bit more. And it really, we make it in a way that's so positive for the cats that they don't mind. And they're ready to do this and at least play around in another home. And most of the secret tips that my fosters have said is really that, one, ringworm is not scary. It's not a worm. You can't get it. All of my foster parents, they've not gotten ringworm. They've not gotten it. Most of them have resident animals. I have not been given it to their resident animals. And a lot of it has to do with preparation. You know, a lot of these guys, got to get everything together, got to get organized, and really coming up with a plan. And really the most of all is to have fun with these guys and to really encourage foster parents to have fun and then tell people about what they're doing. You know, I have the foster parents come in and teach a class with me because I like them to tell them how rewarding it is to have these animals in their home and to know that they are able to do their treatment so that they are able to have other animals come into the shelter and avoid euthanasia at their source shelters. And they have lots of fun. And these kittens are adorable and they have a great time in these homes. And these homes learn how to do a lot of this and they aren't getting infected with ringworm themselves. And then I'm able to bring in a lot more animals into the shelter. So this is the face I get when I tell people that I work in ringworm. You may have gotten this face when you told people you're going to a ringworm lecture today. It just kind of, we call it the face. It just comes on when ringworm is said. It comes on when somebody said, oh no, there's ringworm in the shelter. And you're like, oh no, where is it? But really that face is very infectious. That face makes somebody else look at you and be like, what's wrong? And then everybody has the face of like, oh, this is going to be a problem. But really, once we understand what we're doing and we have the knowledge, we need to go to that other lady and be like, yeah, bring it on, ringworm. Like, we got this. We got a plan. I know where to house you. You're going to get out of this. You're going to get adopted. We're going to get more. And it's a good job security for me. And really, we just need to take on a different attitude. And I really feel that as soon as we get some education, we take on a better attitude with ringworm. And through more education and discussion, we know that we can go from this lady who's like, oh, I don't know about it. I may get it. It's maybe everywhere. And then we learn, no, it's not everywhere. It's controlled. It's contained. We can get over this. And that is the point where we get to start helping shelters, is when we change our attitude. And I really feel that a lot of attitude is just changed through a lot of our discussion and through the education and coming to webinars like this. So, all right, we finally reached the end. Thank you guys so much for coming in and logging in for this. And thank you to a lot of the doctors before me that have kind of given a lot of the information so that I could take their information and get it to the shelters that need it the most. And most of all, thank you to the SF SPCA for providing care and housing for these animals and giving me a job so that I can talk to you guys today. All right, let's get to some questions because that's the most fun part for me.
That was fantastic, Laura. Thank you so much. And there are heaps of questions. There's some in the chat and some of the Q&A. Let's maybe go to the Q&A first.
Okay. Why don't you start?
Yeah.
Let's see.
So we've got Ruth is asking, whilst waiting on the cultures, do you separate all the kittens? Otherwise, you risk infection results changing from negative to positive.
There you go. Perfect. So yes, with those 4 kittens, what I would do is I would take our patient 0 who has the lesions that are Woods positive, and I'm like, yep, it's ringworm. He's going to go straight into ringworm positive land. My other kittens are going to sit in the isolation ward, and they're going to, or a quarantine ward, and they're going to sit in a quarantine ward by themselves. They're going to get 1 lime sulfur dip to go after their culture. They're going to get a lime sulfur dip and wait. And so with that lime sulfur dip, we just took away all the spores from their hair coat so that those spores that landed on the hair are not going to have the 7-10 days to chew through the outer keratin layer and go in and make an infection. Hopefully we'll wash that off before any of those happen so that even if you did grow a few colonies, I know that that was pre-dip. What I can do is if I'm really not on the fence, you grew like 5 or 7 colonies, which makes me a little more nervous, but it's not 300. I may then culture you again. Now you've been separated from patient 0, you've had a dip, and then now your second culture should be completely negative because you're not exposed to anybody and you're in a separate room. Again, then that animal has to wait 2 weeks, but that's better than waiting 8 weeks and being positive.
Yeah, fantastic. Now, I'm not sure if you're familiar with products called Ostrozole or Amaverol. Do you have those in the States?
No.
Nerida, we might need to find out what the active ingredient is in those, and we will see then if Laura knows. Lee asks, is a black light used to detect urine the same as a woods lamp?
Yes and no. So woods lamps are technically a plug-in guy. The best ones that you can buy are from Burton. They're going to put you back like $400 though. So, and Dr. Moriello and researchers say, oh, you can only use this at the best wavelength. The ones on the urine are too low of a wavelength and you can't see it. Now, I have been able to find different types of woods lamps that actually glow very well that can be kind of cheaper. But your regular urine one is going to be a little too not bright enough. So it needs to be super bright so that it reflects off the hairs of the cat. So there are different types of lamps that can be used. And I have something that I can send. I have a bunch of things that I can send to Nell or somehow to get, like I have a few like from Amazon, like this one that I've tested. Because what I do is I take a really positive cat and I look at it with a whole bunch of different types of woods lamps. And I kind of wanted to see what kind of cheaper woods lamps, because I get for shelters to use that could still be pass as a good identifier. Because lots of times you need something in the field that you don't have a plug. And this one you can actually do in the white light too, because it's super bright, but don't put it in your eyes because it does kind of sting. So there's a list of them I can get you. They're not all the same. So sometimes they're too weak and I can't see anything on the cat. And sometimes it's still the same price, but a different type, and I can see it better. So I will get you a list of them, but not all are created equal.
Yeah, any resources we can add to the recording of this on the website, which would be great. Lee has
maybe I'll send it to you over email, send you a bunch of stuff over email, and then you can post it on the webpage.
On the website. Lee has another question as well. Any way of treating a frightened cat who can't be touched? Would orals mixed in food and cleaning the environment with no dip be effective?
Yes. So also like feral cats or outside cats, they will cure ringworm on their own. So if there's a cat that's not handleable, not going to be adopted, just put it back. Like, because it will self-cure, especially an adult cat, because those cats are outside. They're not sleeping in the same environment. They're not trapped in a house who also might be in that same environment. So as long as they're outside free roaming cats, like if you bring them in for a spay-neuter clinic and you notice they have ringworm, spay and neuter that animal and then get it back out. It'll self-cure that ringworm and it'll be totally fine. Within about 4 to 5 months in a normal environment, ringworm, it is a fungus. It will kind of live its life cycle.
Fantastic.
And then the ones that are inside, there's different ones, like on that video of using the towel wrap does help a lot to kind of help with some of the animals that aren't too sure about it. But you have to look at their behavior. Is this animal going to be adoptable? What is the final plan with this animal? And then you kind of have, because you always have to match up behavior with the medical treatment.
Nerida has found the active ingredient for amaverol, and it's enilconazole, 100 milligrams per mil. ENIL.
Oh, that would be an oral medication.
No, it's a wash.
Oh, yeah. I don't know. I'm going to take those. I'm going to look those up, but I don't know them off the top of my head. Lime sulfur, I think somebody did say also you can find in like hardware stores or like for
our Bunnings like in the garden departments has it.
Garden departments, yeah. So also those pump sprayers, those sprayers that we use are garden sprayers. We just have the really small ones, but they're the same sort of thing. They're the garden sprayers. Lime sulfur is a gardening product, so some people can get it. Also on Amazon, I can find a lot of things. I can actually find my culture plates on Amazon. They're a little bit more expensive. What we get them is from a company called Hardy Diagnostics. Can't really see it.
So
I get you the information
about the culture plates, whether they're available here in Australia, and I think that's something probably that Aussies need to look into rather than something you can answer. But I know they always used to be. We used to get them from the labs. So
And
maybe
the tubes, I think Kaylee's talking about those like little jars.
Yeah.
The tubes that are little, like, those are not very good. So that is only the dermatophyte test medium. That's only the red part. And it even says on those tubes, like, if it turns red, then it's fungus. But that's not true, because also those tubes are designed for you to hair pluck and place the plucked hair in. You can't actually get a toothbrush sample in there because the agar is at a diagonal. What I've done before, and I've had some shelters like cut their toothbrushes before at a diagonal so that they can at least get like 2 impressions on those little jars, but they don't give you a good reference material of what's going on with that whole cat. Those larger flat just give you a good sample size so that you can actually look at the whole cat and not just a lesion that maybe you're suspected about. I think you probably could be able to get them. We just have to look around, and I can help you find them now.
Okay, fantastic. There's a question, would you use both itraconazole and terbinafine together?
No, they're both fantastic antifungals that can be used independently. They do not, you don't want to do that together. More is not better. And so you just want to use either one of them. Have been proven in many studies to be very successful with curing ringworm. It's just the size and milligrams that they come in, and the animal size is why we use them differently. I have some shelters that just do like a quarter tablet of the terbinafine for every cat. And it's not the most accurate dosage, but it works for them, and it's cheap, and they're able to save some animals. So, but you wouldn't use them together. Always use only one, because they're both doing the same thing.
That's a great tip. Okay, fantastic. Okay, I can't see any more questions in the chat or in the Q&A, but please sing out if I've missed something. Otherwise,
oh, I'm going to put my email address also
great.
in the chat so that you guys, we are now all connected. I love answering emails and all sorts of things. So please feel free, and I will get you some more information now so that you can post onto this. Like the ID chart is just a PDF that I usually kind of give out, and I have a whole bunch of things that I will just give you to share.
That is fantastic. And a big thank you to you, Laura, for giving up your Wednesday evening and doing this for us. We very much appreciate it. It has been a fantastic presentation. Lots of great feedback in the chat. Thanks, guys, because we need to know that you're enjoying it, that, you know, Laura's spending her time, her recreation time.
I'll talk to anybody who will listen, so that's fun.
Oh, that's fantastic. Thank you so much again. Thanks, everybody, for attending. Keep an eye out on our social media and then e-news for the next webinar, which will be next month, and let us know if you have any particular presenters or topics that you would like covered.